Community is more than where you live. It's the people in it.
I help equip Baton Rouge communities with resources that facilitate change.
Who go above and beyond to help it thrive.
I'm educating children in the Bronx on their community history.
During Black History Month, AARP recognizes leaders who uplift communities.
I'm helping the community take their health more seriously.
AARP believes when we unite for the greater good, we thrive together.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gwen Ingram, and I'm a volunteer for AARP Virginia State Office. I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I've been here several years, so this is my home now. And tonight's program is really special to me because I've been doing some family research. My grandmother and her siblings were born in Tulsa. I know you heard about Tulsa. And we went there this summer to visit the Greenwood Cultural Center. So it's very interesting to me. And I grew up in that area. We'd like to thank Brian for his willingness to share his work showcasing our unique African-American history that is often hidden, as you know, and not featured in the history books or museums. So thank you, Brian, and I'd like to welcome everyone.
Thank you, Gwen, for being our illustrious AARP community ambassador. Thank you for being here. Sure. And I can't wait either. I didn't know you were from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, I want to say good evening, everyone, and welcome to Asala Richmond's Black History Month Wind Down Wednesday series with AARP Virginia. My name is Michelle Evans Oliver, and I am the president of Asala Richmond. For those of you who haven't been with us before, Asala means the Association for the Study of African American Life and History. And it was founded by Dr. Carter G. Woodson in 1915. We've been around for over 100 years. We have 46 branches all over the United States, and our mission is to promote, research, preserve, interpret, and disseminate information about Black life, history, and culture to the global community. So we are on Black History Month, Black History Year, 365 days of the year. Even though we've been totally online during this pandemic, it has allowed us to expound our territories to all four corners of the US. We have people from as far as, like we see, California, south as Texas, and even as far up north as Minnesota. We reach audiences with our monthly series like Cultivate and our Sunday sit-ins. And like today, Wind Down Wednesdays with Brian Bullock. I can't wait for this 15-minute documentary. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Brian Bullock, but we're going to talk about discovering our own family history. Brian Bullock has been our sit-in filmmaker every Wednesday for the past all this February, and we're so excited to be here with him today. We will follow him as he treks through North Carolina to find his family. Once this film is over, we will have another world-renowned genealogist, Renate Yarborough Saunders, as she helps us with our genealogy. So I'll give her proper introduction once we finish the film. And don't forget to add your questions and in the bottom where it says Q&A, and we'll be right with you to answer them. I'm going to turn this over to Brian. Brian, how are you this evening?
Hey, Michelle, good to see you. Good to see everyone. Thank you to everyone who's joined. And if this is if you're a repeat person, we thank you so much for joining us. I'm looking forward to this session tonight. Really hearing from some of the folks who are on and who are not on the panel, but some of the attendees here, some of the audience. What you all are going to see is a short documentary about me learning more about my family, the Bullock family. And it's the result of me doing research, along with two of my other cousins, doing research through Ancestry and those sort of platforms, and learning a little bit more, and really just getting to the point where, you know what, I got to go to Enfield, North Carolina, and Rocky Mount, North Carolina, which is where the majority of my family live. It wasn't really planned. This was not planned to be a documentary. I just knew I just needed to bring a camera and just kind of capture what happened. I should say that going to Enfield was not the first time being at Enfield. We go to family reunions there all the time. I knew a fair amount about my family, but I learned a lot more going there with the intent of just investigating and just being curious. So this really is an account of that experience, along with my cousin Carrie Wider, and you'll see some of my other cousins and uncles and so forth in this. And it's just really the beginning. I did it some years ago, and so it's ongoing. As many of you all know, something like this can go on for a long time. But what you're going to see is just the beginnings of the research and really the documentation about my family. So I hope you enjoy it. This is Kerry Wider. He's my first cousin, and his mother, Margaret Bullock Vaughn, and my father, Steve Bullock, are brother and sister.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll try to get in touch with him, but slap on an extra piece of fish for him.
Kerry has emerged as one of our family historians, but he's quick to give credit to our cousin Al Bullock and others such as Mary Scott and Charles Bullock. This film documents a 2-day odyssey in which we begin to uncover the details of our family history. What family, you ask? The Bullock family. As of now, the Bullock family history can be traced back to Moses Bullock, born 1794, and Agnes Bullock, born 1796, in Lower Fishing Creek in Edgecombe County, North Carolina. From that union came Lewis Bullock, our great-grandfather, Moses Bullock Jr., Norfleet Bullock, and Aaron Bullock. Today we're headed to Pollocksville, North Carolina to meet our cousin, James Bullock. James is also our first cousin. His father, William Harvey, is the brother of Margaret and Steve.
So what's one of the things you're looking forward to today? Getting some fish. At this point. I'm looking forward to hear James talk about the history and his relatives and so forth. I've always enjoyed him, the way he presents, stuff and so forth. He has a special way of speaking, and it's very enjoyable.
As we pull into James's driveway, we are both excited about being able to hear him talk.
And you could have at least wore some bright colors.
You had it out here already?
Yeah.
I thought you had. Turn that thing off, man.
My name is James H. Bullock Sr., born in Enfield, North Carolina, the year of 1939, the month of November. I grew up in Enfield, born in Tillery. Didn't stay in Tillery very long from what my parents told me. So we moved to Enfield, and the first place I remember living in Enfield was at the Whiteheads Farm. And there in 1945, I guess 45, 46, I started first grade. And we lived in the very back of that farm, I guess a mile from the road. And I had to walk from the house to the road. And my dad had bought me a pair of black and white shoes. I don't see them often now, but I don't know what they were called. But I remember very well at that age that if I looked at my shoes, how pretty they were, that I soon would get to the road. And that was what I did every morning going. In the evening, I had to run because boys were throwing rocks. And so it didn't take me long in the evening, it didn't take me long in the morning because I had something to concentrate on, something to think about other than the distance. I remember mules and tractors. I remember discipline. That was, well, there was no sparing the rod where I come from. I remember good times. And I always remember going hungry. We always had something to eat. And there was always something going on to cause us to laugh and to clown. And my mama was the clown. She could cause you to laugh behind anything. And they call her Aunt Rose, and many of our relatives came to see us, and Mama would get up in the middle of the night, cook, and then everybody would go to sleep. Grandpa was a small man. I remember picking him up and putting him in the truck and driving around through the farm. He would take a look at it. And it was just to get out of the house, because he was couldn't get very far walking because of arthritis. That's what I thought it was. But anyway, he was a small man, short man, maybe my height, best I remember, and wasn't heavy either, because I could pick him up at 16. I had license then. I remember prayer service. I used to move from house to house in the community. And Grandpa, William Henry, could, folks said he was filled with the Holy Spirit, and then they are emotional at that time. Well, Grandpa could say a prayer that would bring a tear to your eyes. Not only that, he was the song leader. He led the song. But Morse could do that too. You didn't know Morse. I heard of Morse, I'm sure. But Morse could do that too. So I remember at nighttime when the band would come by Grandmama's house, that Grandpa would be singing and praying. Others prayed too, but they depended upon Grandpa to lead the song. And he did that well. Grandmama was a stricker for knowledge. You had to go to school. You had to study. That she also prompted us, you are as good as anybody. Love of family. Like my dad, I think my daddy got that. Brothers don't fight each other. You can always find something good to think about, no matter where you are, what you do, and what has happened. If you slow down long enough, you can think about something that is good. And time passes fast, and it helps ease the problems that we now have.
After meeting with James, we'll call it a day and head back to our hotel in Wilson, where we'll get some rest and get an early start to day 2. After a good night's rest, Carrie and I meet in the morning to plan our day. We decide that our first stop will be a cemetery located on Route 33 in Leggett, North Carolina. As we make our way, Carrie and I enjoy the sights of our beautiful homeland and wonder what it was like 130 years ago. We arrive at our destination and begin to navigate through the many headstones. We realize that the North Carolina sun is hot and there is no shortage of gnats and mosquitoes.
This tombstone says, "Until we meet again, farewell. Moses Bullock, Jr., February 24th, 1874 to
You can get down there and move it.
What looks like February 4th or something. Yeah, 4th, 1936. And we'll be able to correlate those dates with, our research. That should be Lewis's brother, based upon the dates and the fact that it's a junior. Right next to that tombstone is a Alice Lee Bullock, December 7, 1876 to March 26, 1928. And it says at the bottom of the headstone here, right here, our loving mother. Okay?
So Alice would have been who?
Probably his wife, but I'll have to check that.
To our delight, our cousin Charles Bullock arrives. Charles is our first cousin and is the brother of James, who we interviewed the night before.
Everything we're doing here is secondary in comparison.
I'm telling you.
All right.
He will remain as our guide for the rest of the day. After we've had our fill of the Route 33 cemetery, we decide to head to a farm where our great-grandfather Lewis and great-grandmother Lizzie lived.
Actually, Moses used to live on this side, I believe, down there. And Lewis lived on this side. This is Granddaddy's,
Granddaddy William
Henry's father lived here at one time.
It proves to be somewhat difficult to find, but we eventually make our way into the woods where we locate the foundation of the house.
Yeah, man, we only stayed down here 2 or 3 weeks, as far as I know. So, if I remember correctly from what Al was saying, the front door was over this way.
Yeah, I would think so, facing there.
And there were some stairs here or hereabouts. See that you got one corner of the porch over there.
Oh yeah, I see.
Okay. And then the other corner would have either been this way or that way. Probably that way. And then you have your cornerstones over here.
Okay.
All right, now part of this area back here would have been the kitchen.
Okay. Kind of offset from the...
Now the kitchen was not attached to the house.
Right.
They did all the tanning and stuff like that in the kitchen.
Being on the grounds where our forefathers and mothers walked was surreal. Our next stop was to where our great-uncle George and Martha Bullock are buried near Brick School. George is the brother of our grandfather, William Henry Bullock. We also head over to George's house just a little ways up the road. Although it's overgrown, it's still worth visiting the first 2-story house built in the area.
Wood shingles on the outside. His sons built this house for me. There's shingles on the outside and wood planks on the inside. You see this brick in there? Same brick we just got finished looking at. Same foundation. You see?
Yep.
And the brick that's laid in there is red brick, just like this brick here. And that's a fireplace or something.
Yeah, I would think so.
After George's house, we decide to head to Brick School. Brick School was a pioneering boarding institution which provided education for African Americans in segregated North Carolina from 1895 to 1933. T.S.M. Borden founded the Brick School in 1895 to serve the large number of rural African Americans in the eastern North Carolina counties and to provide solid academic training and an extension program for agricultural workers. It was funded by Mrs. Joseph Brick. During our visit, we met a helpful group of Brick staff that gave us a tour and talked to us about what it may have been like when our cousins attended back in the late 1800s and early 1900s.
My mom lived in one of those houses.
House with a bell?
Yeah, that's his house where the bell is.
It was a great visit, and we were encouraged to return as much as we need to. Our next stop is to the cemetery where our grandfather, William Henry Bullock, is buried. William Henry was married 3 times. His first wife was Mary Powell Bullock, and they had 4 children. His second wife was Hattie Rose, and they had 1 child. His third wife was Ida Mayo, and they had 11 children.
This is William Henry. That's your daddy's daddy. William Henry right there. His granddaddy. This is your uncle, Morris. Did you ever meet him? Okay. That's your dad's brother. Matter of fact, he's a knee baby. This is your daddy's brother, which is your uncle, right? Right here.
This is
Leslie, L-E-S-L-I-E. Bullock. This is his wife right here. Hattie. She was a Cofield. See that C in there? Hattie Cofield. Her maiden name was Cofield. Bullock. That is a copious surrogate. She was a copious, so I was told.
Carrie, Charles, and I were so entrenched with discussing our family history, we hadn't even noticed the quickly approaching storm. So we dash off to our next stop, the cemetery where our grandmother, Ida, Charles's mother and father, Rose and William Harvey, and sister, Bertha, are buried.
This is Miss Ida. Now we have to have something done with her plaque. Yeah, it's been there for a while. Her plaque is going west. Going west.
We notice that we have managed to still elude the storm, so we make one last stop at Uncle Harvey and Aunt Rose's house, where Charles reflects on his early days.
What now? What?
This
What
was
grade?
Eden School, EDEN School,
And what were the grades you just said?
1 through 6 when I was there.
And then after the 6, you had to go to in Borden?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I was janitor. I was janitor of that school for a while. Now, imagine that, janitor up to 6th grade. So I was below 6th grade, and I was janitor there. But my dad was, we used to, there's a farm right back in there. That's where we used to live. Clinton was born back there. I don't know about Frank, but there's a farm back there. But he would put me on the tractor and trailer and bring me out, and I would make the fires in the morning in the wintertime, make the fires and everything, get the whole place warm, and then we'd go back home and dress, and I'd come back to school. And I was below 6th grade. And I started my bank account out of that school. First bank account I had. I was janitor there, and I opened up my bank account, savings account.
The day ends here, but we realize we've only scratched the surface. With the help of family, we'll continue to tell the amazing Bullock story.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Brian, for sharing. That was amazing. I am always like in awe of people who, like our ancestors, our relatives who still stay in that area. And they have all of this interesting information about who we are. Before I go any further, I want to introduce our world-renowned genealogist, Renate Yarborough Sanders. Renate has been engaged in genealogy research for over 2 decades. Renate is the author of 2 blogs, Into the Light, which focuses on her own family history, and Gene Related, which is a platform for presenting a variety of information of genealogical interest. Renate also produces a mostly African-American funeral program online database in which she publishes vital data extracted from funeral programs. Renate is a member of the National Genealogical Society, the North Carolina Genealogical Society, the Afro-American Genealogical and Historical Society, AUGS, the Virtual Genealogical Association, and the, I'm gonna get this wrong, Tyrrell County, North Carolina Genealogical and Historical Society. She is a panelist on Black Pro Gen Live. She also partnered with another genealogist to a series of webinars called Let's Talk North Carolina Genealogy. She has published articles and genealogical newsletters, as well as in the Franklin County, North Carolina Heritage Book, Volume 1. She knows North Carolina and Virginia history. So thank you, Renate, for being here today.
Thank you, Michelle, for having me and making me out to be more than I am. But
no, you are. It doesn't, when you're that person, you're like, nah, that's not me. But yes, you are. So I really appreciate you being here today, just to talk with Brian in regards to traveling and basically, just trying to look for your ancestors and relatives. And I have a question for you. Well, first, I want to say thank you, Facebook, for being out there. We are streaming live on Facebook right now, and I appreciate all that all of our viewers there, because we have some viewing. And if you have any questions on Facebook, please feel free to ask, and we will attempt to answer them. I want to say that we have people from New Jersey, Colorado, New York, Roanoke, Virginia, Mechanicsville, Virginia, Philadelphia, Powhatan, Florida, Indianapolis, Indiana, New York, Maryland, Delaware, and it's more. I can't read it all. So I want to ask you a question regarding after you exhaust your computer or internet research, is it best to start to go to places like North Carolina, like Brian did, or how do you go about doing that?
Me?
Yes.
Oh, so yes, it's kind of the other way around for me and for a lot of people who have been doing this for some time, because that's how we started. We started going to the ancestral locations, and then the internet came along and, just added spice and flavor to everything we were already doing. So, then it becomes a mix of both. You never need to close the door on going back to where your ancestors were from. I'm very fortunate because I live in Newport News, Virginia, and all of my ancestral locations, except for the mother continent, of course, are within 3 hours driving distance. And so I go quite frequently when I need to for records, but also just for ambiance and feeling that I'm where my ancestors were. I also own one of our ancestral properties in North Carolina, so I have to go there to check on that, and that takes me back. And every time I go there to check on the house, I go out exploring and, just looking for more, visiting old places, but looking for more places where there may be evidence that my ancestors have been. And I have a ton of video, but I'm always by myself. And so it's nowhere near professional. And I thought I was going to show something. I'm glad I didn't put that in my slideshow because it would be embarrassing. But it's before cell phone video. I was using a camcorder, a little handheld camcorder. And then we got to the cell phone video, and that's mostly what I use now. Every now and then I still use a camera. But my videos are very rudimentary, but they're just as powerful for me, and hopefully to the few family members who've ever shown any interest in what I'm doing.
Yes, it's always one or two people in the family who really gets involved. I know I'm the one in my family, and they're like, yeah, okay, their eyes glaze over. But it's, the one thing is there's a great community of people who are looking for their family. So that is, what I call my family.
And that's exactly who I share it all with.
Yes, and they get so excited. It's like, yes.
Yeah.
I want to get back to Brian's documentaries because it was excellent. It kind of showed the organic way of just going to a place and just digging in, finding a relative who's willing to talk and digging in. With that, tell me, I don't know how long ago that was, or have you been looking more into it since that video? And someone asked, has there been any research on your mother's side as well?
Two great questions. So that was done probably 10 years ago or so. It's been some time, and I went into it not trying to produce anything professional or anything like that. I really just wanted to record people as I met them, and I just edited it into something that we could show at family reunions. What I was finding is that when we go to family reunions, we would have folks that would, and I actually wanted to ask, folks about the use of video. It seemed like the family would get more into it when they could see it, as opposed to just reading off the family tree. So that's really why I really wanted to do it, and to just document it. But one of the things that, aside from learning about new family members that I didn't know about, like Charles, there was a few people there that I had no idea about. That was definitely new information. But one of the things that I really wanted to dig in on is the family dynamic. Like, I wanted to know why George had this great big house and had such a different life than my grandfather, William. And I learned why. I learned why. We won't, no need to go into it, but there was a reason for that. And there was a lot of that. And it was just really interesting to me, just learning about those little things that families don't necessarily talk about. And that was just me personally. I mean, I know a lot of times it's just really connecting family members, but I really dug into a little bit more about, and I'm still learning to this day. I've learned something recently that was mind blowing that I can't share yet, but it was just absolutely mind blowing, and in a good way, So yeah, it's just really that family dynamic part of it. There was another question, I think.
Your mother's side of the family.
Oh yeah, so my mother's side of the family has a much more researched history, and we have done that. I haven't documented it through film, but they've done a really good job of documenting that. But I have gone and learned. I was there recently. They're from Lawrenceville, Virginia, and I spent some time there actually right before COVID, doing some digging around. So yes, both sides.
Lawrenceville, Virginia, St. Paul College, HBCU.
Yes.
That's all I know about it.
Wood County, and I have family ancestry from there too.
Oh wow! See, you guys are cousins. So, so thank you for your answer, Brian. I have a question. There was one question in the Q&A, and I want to remind everyone, if you have any questions for Renata or Brian, please put the question in the Q&A, and we'll get to your question. Before I go further, I wanted to ask, I always say that all roads lead to Virginia. And I know that we're talking a lot about North Carolina, but North Carolina was very instrumental in, the migration of a lot of African Americans after the Civil War, during slavery, all of that. So I have always been interested in North Carolina history. It's just very hard for me to break in. So I'm used to doing historical or genealogical research in Virginia, but your how do I want to say it? Your records look a little different. How do you maneuver through just different states and knowing how to research in different areas? Because sometimes it's different. And that goes to Renata because she's the genealogist.
Well, that's very true. Location matters, and it's really important that you become familiar with what is available for the location you're researching. There are two very helpful online resources. One is the Family Search Wiki. If you're not using familysearch.org, you need to start tonight as soon as this ends, because this is a website that's free to everyone from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And it covers the entire world as far as records and records access, making records available for different locations. But they have what's called a wiki for just about every location. They definitely have one for every state. And so you should look up Family Search Wiki and put the name of the state. And it will tell you exactly what resources are available for that state. You can also, they have an African American research wiki also. So if you want to focus it just on African American type records, then put that word in also. And then the other one is Cindy's List, and we're going to be giving you a handout tonight called Clickable Links handout, where you can just click right on the links in the handout and go to these websites. And I believe I have both of those on the handout. But Cindy's List is also a compilation of different resources by state, as well as by country, as well as by ethnicity, or whatever you want to break it down into. So just familiarize yourself with what is really available, and remember to come back to these sites on a regular basis, because things are being added to the internet every day now. So if you take a week or two off, don't think you only have the same pool of resources to check back to, because something new has been added. And then the last thing I'll just say, I tell everybody this every time I get to talk: Google is your very best friend, and Google will know what was added yesterday. So, keep track of your search terms and make sure you run those search terms every few days or so and see what is new and what is available that wasn't there before. Everything is not on the internet, but you can get a good little start sitting at home in your PJs now.
Yes, that's true. And this pandemic has really helped me with my research. So, you said a few things. So you talked about familysearch.org. And I love that because I can find things on Family Search, the free Family Search, that I can't find on Ancestry. So that's a good thing. I'm like, wow, why can't I find this? So it eventually ends up on Ancestry, but sometimes Family Search has it first. And then you mentioned something else, and I thought about Brian. So Brian, when you've done your research, and this was about 10 years ago, how much more research have you accomplished since that time? And when you look back at the video, do you feel like you're like, wow, I really didn't know anything?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, when I look when I look back at the video, I think about, oh my God, I got so much work to do. I think about what I have not done, and I have gone now to back to the Ancestry.com to do research and try to pull as much information and research from there. Have not gone, basically because of COVID, have not gone back in the last couple of years, obviously. But I have honestly have not done as much research as I should, beyond just the family dynamics. Lots of, and I guess you can consider that research. I guess you can consider that research. That's definitely ongoing, but that is really one of the things that just I'm just so interested in just the why behind a lot of things. Like, why is this? Why was Uncle Morris there? That my Uncle Leslie that they talked about, I didn't. There's a story behind Uncle Leslie. There's all these stories. So that's really more where I've been focusing and talking more. My cousin James was just a wealth of information, and he actually passed away just recently in a farming accident. He at almost 80 years old on a tractor.
Oh, wow.
And just but that's the energy that he had, and he loved to talk, and he loved to tell stories. He loved to tell us little things about grandma, and so I've done a lot more of that, and I've shared a lot of that with my cousins and my younger cousins, and gotten them interested in learning more.
Wonderful. It's always good when the young folk are interested in doing research, because we had a lot of oral history in my family, but I like to have I want to see paper. I want to see, and sometimes it's hard when you're doing African American history, especially pre 1870 census records, but it can be done. And there's a lot of information out there. I was just looking at something today in my family, and I saw it's 44,000 pages of like information that I can look through, which was astounding to me. So
can I say one?
Sure, go ahead.
One quick thing. The other thing, and Renata, maybe you can maybe talk about this, but one of the other things that came out of this was the discrepancy between oral stories and what was written. Like some of the headstones, well, no, those dates aren't right. So there has been a ton of conversation in my family about that. And, and then when you look at so where I've kind of got to say, okay, so what's right? What's real? But that's really, that really got stirred up with that video.
It's, there are discrepancies between what's real and what's in the documents or what's on a headstone, and those things you have to just work to find actual documentation to see which one is right. But there's also a lot of discrepancy between oral history and what is actually true.
Yeah.
And we always tell people that there's usually just at least a tiny little grain of truth in every story that's been passed down. But if you think about the telephone game, where you start and you pass something around the circle, and by the time it gets to the other side of the circle, there's maybe one or two words that are the same as the way it started. That's how oral history is. And we're talking about stories that are passed down over 100, 150, 200 years from generation to generation, unless it was written down in the beginning, how can we expect every word to be true? Yeah. So people have to be willing to release some things if you find documentation that the story is not exactly the way that it came down to you. And that can be very challenging, especially with our elders. So you just have to be gentle about it. I mean, I've had a couple of things that I have found out not to be true, and I've tried to communicate it to the elders who aren't even here anymore. This was years ago. And a couple of them took it okay, and a couple of them don't, you know, they didn't like me anymore. They didn't want to see me coming anymore. And I didn't push it, I just left it alone. So just tread carefully, but your job as the historian or as the genealogist, as the researcher, is to find the truth of every matter and try to record that for future generations so they'll know the truth.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, oral history. And then the other piece to it that, you know, I always think about is, what about the people who knew that 200 or 300 years from now, someone's going to read this, so they're going to create their own story. So you got to read into those too. And that's, I don't know, I'm a conspiracy theorist sometimes. We have some questions here. Kitty says, I have relatives in Enfield. My aunt Addie Clark Bobbitt and her husband James Bobbitt own a barbershop and beauty salon in Enfield. When I visited in the late 50s, the barbershop is now run by the oldest son. Do you know this family?
That name is not familiar, but you better believe when I'm back there, I'm going to look for the Bobbitts.
Okay, great.
It's a very common name in the area. Halifax, Franklin, Warren County, Bobbitt's a very common name.
And I've also noticed that North Carolina and Virginia kind of match with some of the counties. Well, a lot of times they match, like
a lot of the counties.
And it's like, what? But I kind of know because, anyway, moving on. Lori said, how helpful is going to the National Archives for Family Research, and what kind of planning is recommended for a visit? I visited many years ago and was overwhelmed.
The National Archives is still closed and has been closed throughout COVID, which means you have plenty of time to prepare yourself for a visit to the National Archives. And one of the ways you do that is, and the same as how you prepare yourself for any trip, any research trip, is to check out that website first and see what is available online, because you don't want to use any of your precious time that you have at NARA doing something that you could have sat at home and have done it online. So know the website. Also, all the repositories will have on their websites what their hours are, what their rules are. You know, most places you can't take a bag, you can't take a purse, you can't take your laptop bag, you can't take an ink pen in with you, you can't take food or drink in with you. So know all of those things and plan ahead of time. Most repositories will have lockers that you can put those things, well, I shouldn't even say most, I'll say some have lockers where you can put those things. I can tell you that the North Carolina Archives and Library does have lockers. So you can step out and drink a sip of water and eat a pack of nabs so you don't have to take away from your research day, but just know everything ahead of time. I can tell you one thing for sure that is absolutely worth a trip to the National Archives is if you have an ancestor with a pension file. If you have, and make sure that it's in that location, because there are other NARA locations also. But if you have an ancestor with a pension file, it is more than worth it to take the trip. But just do your homework first and make sure you're not traveling to DC for something you could have seen from your computer.
Great information. And I have a question for you. I'm going to follow up with a question that's in this chat. Well, it's not really a question. I would like for you to touch on documentation. So when I first started doing research, I didn't write it down because I thought I could remember it. And I found that I have researched relatives 2 and 3 times over because I did not write it down. can you touch upon making sure that you document so that when you do go on these trips, you're not wasting your time? And then the next question is, when will the next census records be released?
Let me answer that one first because it's quick and easy. The 1950 census will be released on April 1st. So census enumerations have 72-year wait periods. And so before they can be released to the public. So we're all excited about April 1st, and they won't be all indexed and everything for you by that time, but there are a lot of different, if you just Google, there are a lot of different videos and workshops out showing you how to prepare for it, how to know where your ancestor, or at this point, it might just be your parents or your sisters or your brothers, depending on how old you are, where their enumeration district was in 1950 so that you can browse the census. And please know that the reason why things are searchable for you on sites like Ancestry and Family Search and all the other sites is because volunteers like you, me, and regular folks are doing the transcribing and doing the indexing for those companies. So if you're interested in that and helping to get more things out more quickly, all of the websites, Family Search, Ancestry, wherever you go, and they'll have a little thing that'll say, it'll either say indexing or it'll say transcribing, and you click on it and it'll tell you everything that you need to do so you can become a part of that. Now, the other part of the question was something about documents.
Documentation, just give us
of your research, yes. So I'm guilty of the same thing, Michelle, and most researchers who didn't start off as like an academic pursuit doing this are all guilty. You know, I just started this 25 years ago, just trying to research my own family. I didn't have any dreams of becoming this renowned genealogist and giving talks and doing all these things. I was just trying to find out where I came from. So I did the same thing. I didn't write anything down. I was looking, I've still sometimes run into records that I know I've seen before, you know. But now that, you know, we're wiser, you want to keep a research log and make sure you notate what record sets you have read through and what was the result of that. What did you find? If you didn't find anything, you still want to notate it and say, you know, you didn't find anything, so you won't go back and read through that entire record set again, or go to that repository again, or go to that whatever the word is again. So you have to find what works for you. There are a lot of different templates you can use for research logs. And again, I just say Google genealogical research logs. My OGS chapter, OGS Hampton Roads, actually has a speaker coming to talk to us about that. I believe it's to our May meeting. And so if anybody's interested in getting that information, since I don't have it handy right now, you can email me. I'll put my email in the chat in just a minute, and I can make sure that you get an invitation to that. But yeah, just whatever format works for you. Some people use paper and pencil. I use a chart a table that I made in Word, because I have like a brain thing when it comes to Excel. A lot of people use Excel, but I can't use Excel very well. So I made a table in Word, and that's what I use for my research log for like different branches of my family or a specific question that I'm trying to answer. And definitely when I'm doing client work, I always use a research log that lets me know where I've been and what I searched for.
Great information. I've learned something from you again. You have to document the source file. Don't do that either. So I need to do that.
Cite everything, even if you don't do it properly. You know, if you don't do the Chicago style or whichever, you know, APA style, just document it in a way that you know how to get back to it. And if it was online, if you did the work online, put the link into your research log so that you can go right back to it.
Wonderful. I'll try to start doing that. So I know it's hard because you want to get down and get, you know, go to the next person, but I can say that researching family is, what is it? It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So, you know, as much as I want to get to the next thing, I'm going to find something else out. So I just now take my time.
Yes, you have to. I'm so good at it when it comes to any clients. You know, I have to be, but for my personal research, I still struggle to do the right thing all the time.
That makes me feel good. Thank you. I want to ask Brian another question regarding filmmaking, because, you know, I think that you said you did this a few years ago, and you weren't thinking about, you know, doing this as a filmmaker as you are now. What has changed during that time? And are you planning on going back to redoing some of your family and doing more films about genealogy? Or this was like one of your first endeavor and you moved on since then?
So I do plan on doing more. And I think we kind of alluded to this a little bit, talked a little bit about it. I kind of put the brakes on it because of some of the discrepancies.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and but I think it's a worthy sort of cause. And what's different now is that the information now, I think even just in 10 years is so much more accessible.
Oh, yeah.
And even even using a cell phone now, like now I don't know if I would even bring a camera. I'd probably just use my cell phone, and there's so much, the quality is so much better. So it's, things have advanced, and I'm not going to say it's easier, but everything is more accessible.
Well, it's really true. I know when you say put on brakes, sometimes genealogical research can get overwhelming. So sometimes you stop and you start. And so I've seen it where I've stopped and started and there's more information. So I do understand that. We have two questions that I want to get to. What other information can you find on the ancestor with a pension file? That's from Melanie C. Melinda C, I'm sorry.
Wow. Well, so I specifically say that with reference to ancestors who were in the United States colored troops during the Civil War, although we also have ancestors of color who participated in the Revolutionary War and also have pension files. But for the USCTs, you are almost always 100% of the time going to find out who their enslavers were, who their parents were, who their siblings were, where they lived, if they ever were sold, or if they were ever, changed owners for any reason. You'll find out what kind of work they do, who their children are. And the reason for this is because they have to basically give this full deposition starting from the moment they were born, where they've been, in order to prove themselves eligible for the pension file, and how they ended up, going into the military, or whether they were a body servant, whatever reason they ended up in the USCTs. So that's why, because in order to research someone who's been enslaved, you have to find out who their owner was. And in those pension files, if they were enslaved, they're going to tell who their owner was. So that work will be done for you. You'll just get more information about a life pre-1870 than many of us will ever know about our ancestors. Even though we can find them in records, that's not the same thing as them telling their whole life story, as you will find that they're doing in pension files.
Great information. So,
and I don't have any ancestors with a pension file, so I'm jealous of everyone who does.
So Kathy wants to know, wonder if you can recommend family tree software.
So I use Family Tree Maker. I am a person in my whole life, I'm a creature of habit. And I started with Family Tree Maker, I don't know, 15 years ago, I don't know how many years ago, and continued with the updates from Family Tree Maker. And so when other people were using some of the other softwares and swearing they're wonderful and better than Family Tree Maker, I was content with where I was. And so that's what I've stuck with. You can sync Family Tree Maker with your trees on Ancestry and family search, although I'm not a proponent for the family search tree, so I'm not going to talk about that. But you can sync it with your tree on Ancestry. So when you make a change on Ancestry, on your tree on Ancestry, it syncs. You have to push a button, but then it syncs right away with what you have on Family Tree Maker. So I recommend that. I also have a copy of Legacy, and it seems fine, but it's just not the one that I actually use.
Judy Whiteside said, I use Family Tree Maker too, and I love it. Just learned about the app that can be shared with family members. That's great. And Donald, he said he's lazy. He said, how can I find someone to do this stuff for me?
Well, there are a lot of people doing genealogical research for others. I have stopped taking clients for research. I still do coaching and consultations. So coaching is when I work with someone usually on a regular schedule. We usually meet either once a month or twice a month, and they tell me what they've done, and then I, kind of review that with them and move them along to the next step with new ideas, new resources. Consultation is usually just one time. You're telling me what you've done. You have a specific research question you're trying to get answers to, and I can give you suggestions about, where to look, what to do, how to move forward, whatever. So that's what I do, but there are many people who do full research, and you just, I'd suggest you go to maybe APG, I think it's apgen.org. I think that's right. And you can check some of the profiles out right there. I don't really want to start naming because I have a lot of friends that do research.
Yeah,
so
you have a lot of friends.
I don't want to, just Google it or go on one of the Facebook groups and ask who might be interested in doing your research, and tell what area, what state, because if you were to ask me to work for you for certain states, I would let you know up front. I've never done research there. I'm happy to do it for you, but I'm not expert in that area, and hopefully anyone would do the same.
Yes, I know, being in all of these genealogical organizations, I see your name everywhere. When I go to anywhere I go, it's either you or maybe 20 other of the world-renowned genealogists. So it's hard. Yeah, I feel that way. So that's what you are to me.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone. It is 7:57, and we promised to cut this off at 8. And there's one more question. Maybe I can squeeze it in. How can you research based on oral history for Native Americans from Richmond, Virginia, Henrico?
Well, I'll take out the based on oral history part and, just say that you would approach that research as you would any research, and go to the same resources that I gave you earlier, as far as the wikis, and put that in the wiki and see what is available. The Library of Virginia has massive resources available for Native American research. So start there too, and you'll get referrals to other repositories.
Thank you for answering that. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Renata, for being here today for our final Black History Month Wind Down Wednesday film series with Brian Bullock. It has been a whirlwind. On Wednesdays, after I get off of work, I'm like, I can't wait. I get to see a movie now. So this has been wonderful and phenomenal. Thank you, AARP Virginia, for sponsoring this event. We have had an excellent time. It's so many. So we've had 4. This is our 4th one. If you go out to AARP Virginia, all the on YouTube, all of the videos are out there, or their Facebook page. And if you go to our ASALH page, ASALHRVA, you'll be able to see our upcoming events and videos as well. So our next event will be this Sunday, and it's for Black History Month. It's our Sunday sit-ins, and it's called lynching and the Confederate monuments. We have another world-renowned genealogist, Dr. Shelley Murphy, and she'll be interviewing two doctors from University of Virginia. So I can't wait. Here we go. Jalen Schmidt and Dr. Jalen Schmidt and Dr. Andrea Douglas. And so they will be helping us and talking about racial and social injustice. We also will have a Cultivate series, and this is every month. So every month we have something going on. Every month on the fourth Sunday, I believe, is Sunday sit-ins. And every month on the second Tuesday, we have a Cultivate series. And our Cultivate series will be for the next 4 months is Africulture. So yesterday we had the deep history between plants and Africa. That was a great informational session where we learned about more information, things I didn't know about Africa and just the correlation to America. And then we have 3 other sessions of Cultivate after that. So we want to invite you to join us. Please like our Facebook page. Again, it's ASALHRVA, and that's where all of our events will be. Thank you so much. I believe that Janaea put the links in the chat, and we will be sending out the links that, she also put the link in for Renate, but we'll send that link out to you tomorrow. And if you have any questions for Renate Yarborough Saunders, she has added her email there as well. It is 8:01. I promised I'm over time. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.